And we are rolling on my end. Just let me know when your counter is ready and we will get started momentarily. 45-second countdown to the start of the show. I need to turn my volume off here so that I can. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Primetime Live. I'm James Cousineau, your host for Jess FM and Jess TV in Lethbridge, Alberta. Thank you for tuning in to another show. We will be looking at a major breakthrough for transit users in Lethbridge as a year-long contract dispute comes to an end. Across the province, we'll look at thousands of striking teachers descending on downtown Edmonton, sending a clear message to the government as the Premier floats the idea of a new education commission. Of course, with that, we will follow up with some national stories, including a major blow to Canada's auto sector that sparked a political firestorm and calls for retaliation against, of course, you guessed it, the United States yet once again. Later in our special investigation, we're going to go deep inside the cold case files of Southern Alberta. We'll explore mysteries that haunt the community and the revolutionary science that's finally bringing answers to some families. Our broadcast tonight is brought to you again by Carey Movers Limited. Whether you're moving across the street or across the province, trust the team that handles every box with Carey. Care. That's careymovers.com. www.karymovers.com, serving Western Canada for long distance moves, and also the lower mainland of British Columbia and Fraser Valley for local moves. Now, as we continue on, ladies and gentlemen, we are looking at labor peace being on the horizon. For nearly a year, Access a Ride transit operators have been working without a contract, creating uncertainty for the vital service and its users. But tonight, that uncertainty is over. The City of Lethbridge and the Amalgamated Transit Union, Local 987, have reached a tentative agreement. Now, this tentative agreement, of course, is between the City of Lethbridge and Access a Ride operators. The deal was struck after 2 intense days of mediation, bringing an end to a protracted negotiation that began last year. Access a Ride is a critical service for many Lethbridge residents with mobility challenges, and the new agreement averts the possibility of job action that could have disrupted the lives of some of the city's most vulnerable citizens. While details of the proposed contract have not yet been announced, we will be looking at those as they come forward. Now, this is being hailed both by the union members and the City of Lethbridge as a positive step forward for labor relations within the city. The successful mediation stands in stark contrast to the ongoing labor dispute in the provincial education sector, suggesting a municipal strategy focused on negotiation to ensure service stability. Of course, there is that welcome development for many in the city, and we will again bring you more details next week, as I assume they will become available by then. Now to a developing story on the crime front. Lethbridge police have made more arrests and laid more charges in what's becoming a disturbing trend of animal cruelty cases in the city. Most recently, the cruelty charges have been laid against Aaron Burke, who's 22 years old, and Savannah Rain McClung, and she is 23 years old, and they, as I said, have been charged. Now, police announced today that the both of them of Coaldale are facing charges of causing unnecessary suffering to an animal. The charges stem from a September 4th investigation at a home in the 600 block of 9th Street South. Now, that was where Community Animal Services reported multiple animals in distress inside a home that was described as unfit for habitation, and we're talking about animals and people. Now, officers inside that home seized 4 puppies, 3 adult dogs, 4 cats, a lizard, and a mouse. Don't forget the fish. Now, this is one of 3 separate and unrelated animal cruelty investigations launched by Lethbridge Police in recent weeks. These have seen a total of 20 animals seized. The accused have been released with conditions not to possess or care for domestic animals and are scheduled to appear in court on November the 18th. While that story highlights a troubling issue, there is also cause for celebration in the region's agricultural community. Two southern Alberta farmers have received a major international honor. This is the story of Chris and Harold Perry from southern Alberta, and they won Global Farmer of the Year award. At its inaugural Global Farmer Awards in New York, PepsiCo, the Pepsi company, has named Chris and Harold Perry the recipients of the Global Farmer of the Year award. In presenting the award, PepsiCo's CEO called the farmers the heartbeat of their supply chain. It's a significant moment of global recognition that underscores the deep-rooted importance and world-class excellence of agriculture right here in Lethbridge. Now, let's take a look at the 2025 municipal election and that final push. It's just a reminder for those in Lethbridge to get out and push that vote for the 2025 municipal election as the final stretch is on. Advanced voting continues today and through Saturday, October the 18th, at two main locations, and that is the Lethbridge Trade and Convention Center, as well as the Cor Van Ray YMCA. If you can't make it to the advanced polls, the City of Lethbridge is working to remove barriers to voting on the final day. On Monday, October the 20th, all city transit services to and from polling stations will be completely free of charge. Coming up after this quick announcement, we turn to provincial affairs and thousands of striking teachers rallying in Edmonton, and the Premier responds with a plan for a post-strike commission. Once again, we just wanted to thank our sponsor, Carey Movers, at www.karymovers.com. They are the face of long-distance moving throughout Western Canada, Canadian-owned and operated. Don't forget to reach out for all of your long-distance moving needs. Now, welcome back to the news segment. And the battle over the future of public education in Alberta intensified today. Province-wide teachers' strike has now kept 740,000 students out of the classroom for 8 school days, and frustrations are boiling over. The teachers' strike on day 8, they decided to hold a massive rally in Edmonton, and that was downtown Edmonton being flooded with a sea of signs and a chorus of chants today as an estimated 8,000 to 10,000 striking teachers and their supporters held a massive rally. The demonstration took place outside of the Edmonton Chamber of Commerce, where Premier Danielle Smith was scheduled to speak. Inside, the Premier addressed the strike, stating that while she wants a negotiated settlement, her government may consider forcing teachers back to work with legislation when the legislature resumes in late October. She also announced a new plan to form a commission on education to study issues like classroom complexity, but only after the strike is over. Now, the ATA president, Jason Schilling, said, "We're not looking for more commissions or committees. We're looking for action to directly improve classrooms now." He doesn't want to see this drag out for a commission. They want to see action, and that's why they are on strike. The union's call for immediate action on wages, class sizes, and student support appears to be resonating with the community. A recent Angus Reid Institute poll found that 58% of Albertans side with the teachers in this dispute, compared to just 21% who backed the government. The poll also reveals that an overwhelming 84% of Albertans believe classrooms are overcrowded. The government's proposal for a future commission, rather than addressing the immediate demands, and that's part of what sparked the walkout. My apologies. Now, this may be viewed by many as a tactic to delay meaningful change, potentially hardening the resolve of educators on the picket line. The Alberta Teachers Association says there is no update on when the two sides might return to the bargaining table. Now, let's take a look at a health system shakeup and a tragic discovery. There are also major changes underway at the province's healthcare system. Alberta Health Services has confirmed that it is moving forward with significant layoffs as a part of its major restructuring. The claims here is that approximately 100 filled positions and 300 vacant positions will be eliminated. Now, in a statement, the AHS said it has begun eliminating approximately 100 of those filled positions and 300 vacant ones. The cuts primarily affect corporate services, including IT, finance, and human resources. The AHS insists that there have been no eliminations in frontline clinical areas and no direct impact on patient services. The news comes as the federal and provincial health ministers meet in Calgary, where today they announced a joint $10 million investment to expand youth mental health services through the nonprofit organization Kickstand. A great announcement when it comes to mental health of youth. So that is a positive. Now, as we end our Alberta report tonight with a tragic but significant breakthrough in a case that has gripped the province. Edmonton police have located the remains of missing teenager Samuel Bird. Now, remains found. I'm just going to pull up an image of this young man so that you can see who it is that we are discussing. And I'll also pull up a CBC report so that you can refer to that later if you wish at cbc.ca/news/Canada/Edmonton. Now, this is a case that involves this young 14-year-old, and he went missing on June the 1st. The remains of 14-year-old Samuel Bird have been located, and a murder charge has been laid in his death. His mother, Alana Bird, announced on social media Thursday that the remains of the boy had been located, confirming what the police had stated a bit earlier in the day. Now, Edmonton Police Service later said in a news release that the remains were located in a rural area outside of Edmonton. Meanwhile, police also say that Brian Farrell, 38 years old, was arrested and charged Wednesday with second-degree murder and interfering with a body in relation to Bird's death. And again, this is as per the CBC. Farrell has also been charged with 13 other offenses, including aggravated assault, arson to property with disregard for human life, unauthorized possession of a firearm, assaulting a peace officer with a weapon, and uttering threats, in addition to fraud over $5,000. Court records show that arson charges involved the West Edmonton property that Bird visited the night that he disappeared. The Edmonton Police Service executed a search warrant on the house on September the 18th. Less than 2 weeks later, the house was in flames, which the EPS said at the time was a suspicious fire. He's also facing a charge of uttering a threat to a woman about Samuel's mother. Police said they are not looking for any other suspects in Bird's death, and Farrell is the only person charged. Bird is a member of the Paul First Nations and has been missing, as I said, since June the 1st after he left his West Edmonton home to visit a friend. His disappearance launched a massive search effort by the family, by volunteers, and of course search and rescue teams. Alana Bird's social media post thanked police and everyone involved in trying to find him, including those who shared his missing poster and showed up at rallies. Tierra Williams helped in the search for Samuel Bird, including organizing a water search on the North Saskatchewan River, and said she cried when she heard the news on Thursday. This young man, as I said, went missing, and it is a tragic ending to this case that he has been found, or his remains have been found, and that a young man has been taken without any excuse for such violent acts in the community. It's also at least some comfort to his mother that they do have the remains, that they have located the individual. However, again, a very sad outcome. Now, the discovery does bring the painful conclusion, but it makes also shows a major development for investigators and their work that they put in day and night to try to help the families in the community. As the promo for our show announced, we will be looking at other cases where the families are still looking for answers, whether that is a suspected assailant, that has not been located, tongue-tied tonight, over up to decades, or others who have been looking for missing individuals. The cold case files in southern Alberta and all of Canada are, of course, a major concern. So we'll look at some of those cases from southern Alberta. We'll also take a look at what Canada is doing and not doing when it comes to solving cold case files utilizing new technology. Up next, before that though, we will be looking at our national report. A major automaker is pulling production out of Ontario, and Ottawa announces a sweeping new plan to tackle violent crime. Once again, we are talking or giving a special shout out to our sponsor tonight. And again, it is Carey Movers at www.karymovers.com, serving Western Canada for all of your long distance moving needs, whether that's your residence or your office, commercial activities, or otherwise. Contact Carey Movers, and once again at www.karymovers.com. Now back to our program. A major shockwave hit Canada's manufacturing heartland this week, raising serious questions about the future of the auto sector and, of course, the country's trade relationship with the United States. Now, Jeep Compass production is moving from Ontario to the United States. Yes, automaker Stellantis has confirmed it's planning to move production of its next generation Jeep Compass SUV from its plant in Brampton, Ontario to a facility in Illinois. The decision is a direct consequence of punishing U.S. tariffs and trade policies, according to Prime Minister Mark Carney. The move has ignited a firestorm, and this, of course, is within politics and within the labor industry in Canada. But we also need to look at how different responses and how this may end up as a major lawsuit going forward. First, of course, we know that Ontario Premier Doug Ford had previously stated, and I'm quoting here, "That guy, President Trump, he's a real piece of work. I'm sick and tired of rolling over. We need to fight back. If you can't get a deal, let's start hitting him hard." And that is, or hitting him back, sorry. That is a statement by Premier Ford, and he's calling right now for retaliatory tariffs and reflecting a growing anxiety over Canada's economic vulnerability. The auto sector is Canada's second largest export, directly employing 125,000 Canadians. With over 75% of all Canadian exports heading to the U.S., the Stellantis decision is seen as a canary in the coal mine. A warning that even with trade agreements in place, America First political pressure can override them, leaving Canadian jobs and industries exposed. Now, responding, Federal Industry Minister Melanie Joly called the production shift unacceptable and warned that Stellantis made commitments to Canadian production in exchange for substantial financial support by the Canadian taxpayers, suggesting that the legal action could be on the table. And again, I can't reiterate that enough. Stellantis received Canadian tax dollars to help them keep production here in Canada. And now they're walking away to move the production down to the United States. Now, meanwhile in Ottawa, the federal government is moving to address growing calls for tougher measures against violent crime. Prime Minister Mark Carney today announced that a new suite of legislative and financial commitments is coming very soon. Ottawa is targeting violent crime through that new legislation to toughen bail and sentencing. Very big news for those who have been screaming for this change for decades. Now, our government has promised to strengthen bail and sentencing laws, and that's exactly what they intend to do, to give police and prosecutors stronger tools to keep violent offenders off of our streets. The government will table a bill next week that aims to keeping violent offenders and repeat offenders behind bars. The proposed legislation will introduce a reverse onus system for bail hearings involving serious crimes like violent auto theft, human trafficking, and sexual assault. That means that the accused would have to prove why they should be released instead of the Crown having to prove why they should be kept in incarceration or in detention. So the bill also seeks to allow for consecutive sentencing. That means that multiple crimes can result in longer prison time. And he'll also bring in harsher penalties for organized retail theft, something that has been having a major impact on retailers across the nation. In addition to the legal changes, the government is pledging an additional $1.8 billion in the next budget to hire 1,000 new RCMP personnel to combat everything from financial crime and money laundering to online child exploitation. The Prime Minister says the new measures are being developed in close consultation with provinces and law enforcement. So again, they want to make sure that the changes made are going to have teeth and going to be effective. Now, let's take a look at some headlines from around the world before we get into our special report tonight. In Washington, the partial U.S. government shutdown has hit the 2-week mark with no signs of a breakthrough in the deadlock between congressional Democrats and Republicans over healthcare funding. Tensions are rising between the United States and China. U.S. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent today criticized Beijing's export controls on rare earth minerals, calling on American allies to de-risk and diversify their supply chains away from China. This will undoubtedly have retaliatory moves by China, although we haven't heard anything official from the Chinese government as of yet. And in South Asia, a moment of calm. Pakistan and Afghanistan have agreed to a temporary 48-hour ceasefire to de-escalate recent tensions along their shared border. Now, when we return after this sponsor break again, we return to our special investigation. When a crime happens, we report on the investigation. But what happens when the trails go cold? When years, even decades pass with no answers? Tonight, we're going to go deep inside the cold cases of southern Alberta. We'll describe families who never gave up hope and explore the revolutionary science that's breathing new life into old mysteries. Primetime Live, Justice Delayed, is next. Now, our special investigation is also, like our news, brought to you by Carry Movers Limited, because sometimes the heaviest things we carry are our memories. Don't forget that you can reach out to Carry Movers at www.karymovers.com to get information, rates, and availability for your long-distance move throughout Western Canada. Or for those viewers in the Metro Vancouver and Fraser Valley, you can always reach out for local services in those regions as well. Now, let's get back to our special report, ladies and gentlemen. It's Primetime Live's special report into the cold case files, Justice Delayed. This is a concern for any person who's been the subject of a crime or a family who tragically loses the life of a loved one in terms of a violent offense. For police, it's a file placed in a cabinet. For the justice system, it's a statistic. They call it a cold case, an investigation where all leads have been exhausted, where the trail of evidence has faded to nothing. It's a case that remains open but inactive pending the discovery of new evidence, new witnesses, or a breakthrough in technology. Tonight, as we look at a few cases, remember, you could be that key in unlocking decades-old mysteries. If you have information about a cold case file, whether it's one that we covered tonight or one that you may think the information is too small to be a consideration, don't forget that sometimes they have information and tips and other clues that all they need is that tiny piece of thread to intertwine and to stitch them together. So keep that in mind. And if you have any information on an unsolved crime or potential information, make sure you reach out. The police would much rather that you reach out, get that information, and find out that it is not related or insignificant, as opposed to keeping it secret and it being that thread that could close a file and give some comfort and some peace to families. Now, tonight we're going to step into the world of Southern Alberta's unsolved mysteries. We look at the faces of the forgotten, tell the stories of whose voices were silenced, and explore the incredible scientific revolution that is finally offering a new glimmer of hope for justice, long delayed. Now, let's take a look at the unforgotten of Southern Alberta. because the pain of an unsolved crime is felt in communities across the region. From small towns to the heart of the big cities, there are families who have awaited years or even decades for answers that have never come. For our first story, we traveled to Lethbridge and to a mystery that is as recent as it is baffling. Now, this is the disappearance of Marshall Awasa. Let's pull up an image of Mr. Awasa here. I believe I have one, or maybe I don't. Yes, we do. We actually have a video as well from a Facebook page dedicated to this individual. So let me just get that open first, and then we'll go on to some information about this individual. Now, he was last seen in Lethbridge, Alberta, November the 17th, 2019, and he was 26 years old. Yes, that was the life of Marshall Awasa. He drove from his home in Calgary to his mother's house in Lethbridge. He helped her with a computer problem and left around 11 p.m., telling her he was heading to the storage locker he shared with his sister before driving back to Calgary. He never made it back. Security logs from the storage facility reveal a strange and troubling timeline. Marshall made multiple attempts to access the unit throughout the night. He finally got inside at just after 6 o'clock a.m. on Monday, November the 18th, and stayed for more than 2 hours until about 8:30 a.m. That was the last trace of him. Marshall's sister, Paige Foggin, had stated in an archive interview, that we just want to know what happened. Somebody knows something. You do not just disappear. Now, a week later, the mystery deepened with more than 1,200 kilometers away in a remote, densely wooded area near Pemberton, British Columbia, which is just north of Whistler, British Columbia. Hikers stumbled across Marshall's dark blue GMC Sierra truck. It had been completely burned out. Scattered around the scene were some of his personal belongings, a smashed cell phone, an expired passport, but his wallet, his backpack, and his laptop were gone. This is an area that Marshall had no known connection to. It is, for people that aren't familiar, it is a very small community. However, there is the surrounding of dense forest and rugged mountain terrain. So it's a very odd place for him to end up. Now, the official police assessment at that time stated there was no evidence to suggest a criminal offense had been committed. But for his family, the bizarre circumstances, the strange behavior at the storage locker, the impossible distance his truck traveled, and the fire point to only one conclusion, and that, of course, is foul play. The family's public pleas for a criminal investigation highlight a systemic challenge in such cases. Without a body or a clear crime scene, a case can languish in an investigative gray area, classified as a missing person rather than a homicide, which can impact the resources dedicated to it. For the Awasa family, the absence of evidence is not evidence of absence. It is simply a deeper, more painful part of that mystery. Now, let's take a look at a video that's on a Facebook page, and you can see the address on the top of your screen on that. And if not, you can just search Marshall Awasa on Facebook. His last name is Iwaasa, as you may or may not be aware. But let's take a look at this quick video here. And there is no audio, just some noise in the background or some music playing in the background. But I'm going to just mute the sound on that video, because of the fact that this way it doesn't get hit with being blocked on any of the social media platforms, just to make sure the story gets out there to the most people possible. So you can see there was his truck. That was the actual vehicle. That was the scene towards Pemberton, British Columbia. And on the screen, you can see the Crime Stoppers and the Lethbridge Police Department phone numbers. If you know anything or are able to shed any light on this, please make sure you do. It is just such a shame that this family has had to go so many years without any answers. And it's just a real shame to see this happen. But it's also about finding justice and holding anybody accountable in this matter responsible, if indeed it was foul play, which I would personally suspect that it was. But again, uh, can't confirm that without the final information or further results. So again, if you have any information, please reach out. Now, as we continue on, ladies and gentlemen, of course, we know that Marshall Iwasa's case is a fresh wound for the community in terms of timelines, but it's just the latest name on a long list of Southern Alberta's unsolved cases. A list of families that have been waiting much, much longer. Now, let's just make sure I've got the right one up here. Yes, that is Julie. So in Lethbridge, there was a young lady that went missing, 23-year-old Julie Ann Durion, and she has been missing since January of 1980. Her disappearance from Lethbridge is still an open investigation. She was she was 7 months pregnant at the time of her disappearance. Over 45 years now, her case remains open, and she is presumed, of course, to be a victim of homicide. If anybody has any details about this case, then I strongly urge you to come forward and to reach out to police. It may be something that's been on your mind for decades, but that you've never spoken out about. It may be information that you gave to police at the time, but there's a little bit additional that maybe you've recovered or in your memory and been reminded of since then, or you just want to reach out and go over the details again with police so that they have the correct information in case any mistakes were made in the notes of the original case. Now, Julie had moved to Lethbridge from BC's Lower Mainland in 1979. In a 2018 news release, police said she was an associate of the Ghost Riders Motorcycle Club, which operated in British Columbia and Washington State. As the investigation progressed, police received conflicting and unconfirmed reports that Julie may have returned to BC or moved to Ontario, as well as reports that she was the victim of a homicide. That was according to a CBC report way back. Now, Julie was officially reported missing in June of 1983. In 1985, police executed a search warrant to search and excavate a home believed to have been shared by Julie and her boyfriend. No sign of Julie was found, and police have been unable to determine if her disappearance was voluntary or the result of foul play. Of course, if she chose to go away herself, then that is her prerogative, and she has that right. And if she's out there listening, then I would encourage you to contact police just to at least let them know that you are alive and that you are safe, and for whatever reasons that you decided to move forward with your life. Now, this does, again, remain open. She is considered still a missing person. And, of course, as I said, she is one of those cases that's remained open, as I said, for 45 years. So, once again, if you know of anything to do with Julie Ann Durion, please reach out to law enforcement agencies and or Crime Stoppers and give them information. And this is what she would have looked like, or this is what she did look like back around the 1980 date that she had disappeared. Moving on, there's also Rebecca Boutillier, I believe it is pronounced, and she was murdered in Calgary in 1993. Now, Rebecca, of course, was 20 years old. She was stabbed to death on March the 11th. Now, When she went missing, a month later, her body was found beside a busy road. Her killer has never been identified. So if you know anything about this case, again, you can also go to CanadaUnsolved.com, and that's where I pulled up a few of these files to share with you, because they had a bit more detail about the cases than some of the police departments, depending on where the cold cases are coming from. Now, it says that her remains were discovered in a heavily traveled area east of McKnight Boulevard and 68th Street northeast, meters from a pile of roof shingles she had been stabbed to death. Rebecca's jacket, purse, and boots had never been found. Investigators believe that they were kept by her killer. At the start, there were several hopeful leads. Investigators collected 3 huge plastic containers of canola seeds from the scene and sent them to the Federal Crime Lab in Edmonton for analysis. There are different news reports and other information that are available, again, through CanadaUnsolved.com. And there they have information as well as some of the historic newspaper and archived newspaper articles, and some current maps and Google views of the area where she had been found. As I said, if you have any information, please reach out to the local police department in Calgary or to Crime Stoppers. As we move on, ladies and gentlemen, we'll take a look at another case that, of course, is in the cold case files, and that is of Stuart Allen Alexander, murdered in Calgary in 1986. Now, in 1986, it was December, and 65-year-old Stuart Allen Alexander was working at the Checker Cab gas bar in Calgary. Here we have an image of this individual, and we'll just pull that up here. Bear with me. There we go. There we go. And again, that is Mr. Stuart Allen Alexander. And he was working at that gas bar in Calgary when he was murdered during an apparent robbery. Now, nearly 4 decades have passed, and his family is still waiting for justice. If you know anything or have any details about this case, please reach out to the Calgary Police Service, and you can reach out to the detectives there and the cold case detectives as well, or units. So please feel free to contact them if you have any information. Just a reminder, folks, that the number is on the screen tonight. If you want to call in and have your say, report any information, we encourage you to contact the police services or Crime Stoppers with any information about cold case files. If you would like to call in and discuss any other topic that we have been talking about this evening, or about your investigations into cold case files, if you're an investigator, by all means, you're welcome to call in. Or families, if you have a cold case file, a missing family member, or other crime that has gone unresolved, feel free to call in live to 1-604-385-5093. The phone line is open, and you're welcome to call in right now if you wish. Now, these cases that we've looked at are just a couple of the names. To understand the true scope of the problem, we've compiled a list of some of the most prominent cases, but again, it is a very small list in comparison to the number of active files, not only in Lethbridge and Southern Alberta, but across Canada. It's also a sad state that minorities and at-risk individuals who are more vulnerable to crime are the ones that get left behind. And there's many reasons for that. It could be due to the transient lifestyle that they may be leading. It could be that they don't have a lot of relatives in Canada if they're minorities and were new to Canada. These are cases that, regardless of the background of the individuals, need to be solved. They are somebody's child, somebody's mother, somebody's father. They are people, and we need to try to come together to help give the remaining family members some peace of mind, and also to put the mystery to rest. But most importantly, we also need to hold to account those who are responsible for heinous crimes in our country. Now, we already spoke tonight about Marshall Iwasa, and again, he was 26 years old, disappeared from Lethbridge but his vehicle found in Pemberton, British Columbia, that was from 2019 that he was last seen, and the case status is listed as missing and foul play suspected. Now, Julianne Durian, that we spoke about, again, 23 years old from Lethbridge, and she went missing in 1980, presumed dead by homicide. Rebecca Boutelet, 20 years old from Calgary, that happened in 1993, and again listed as a homicide. They are looking for any details to help bring this case closer to closure. Stuart Allen Alexander, 65 years old, working at the gas bar in Calgary. Again, that robbery and murder happened in 1986. If you have any details, reach out to the Calgary Police Service. There's also the case of Jennifer Jantz, and we don't know her age, but she is a victim of homicide in Calgary in 1991. In addition to Roxanne and Don Carlson. Again, victims of homicide in Calgary in 2014. So again, these are cases that will be covered on True Crime and Justice TV if you follow that channel at truecrimeandjusticetv.com. These are cases that will be explored in the new series of Cold Case Files coming up in the next few weeks. That series launches. And they'll be focusing on cold case files from all across Canada. So make sure that you check that out. But there's a lot of other amazing videos on the channel already that you can watch for free. You can stream them from your phone or from home at www.truecrimeandjusticetv.com. Now, for every name on that list, there's a family, a circle of friends, and a community left with questions. For decades, many of the files gathered dust, and hope for a resolution is fading with each passing year. But now, a revolution in science is changing everything. Well, as we come back, we'll talk about the DNA revolution and how a new forensic technique is cracking cases once thought to be unsolvable. Our special investigation, Justice Delayed, will continue in just a moment. In the meantime, folks, we just wanted to once again acknowledge our episode sponsor, Carry Movers, www.carrymovers.com. You can call them or email them and find online forums for moving throughout Western Canada. Feel free to reach out to our sponsor that we appreciate in order to help us bring this program to you. And again, it's www.karymovers.com. Now, let's get back to our special report. Now, the DNA revolution, and that's where science is finding a voice for the victims. Welcome back to the special report on Southern Alberta's cold case files. For years, the key to solving these crimes lay locked away in evidence boxes, on a piece of clothing, under a victim's fingernails, or on a cigarette butt in some cases. The evidence was there, but the technology to unlock its secrets was not. Until maybe now. The power of old evidence, combined with, of course, the DNA revolution, brings new hope for that old evidence. The foundation of this new hope lies in the remarkable advancement of DNA analysis. Scientists can now successfully extract a full DNA profile from a biological evidence that is aged, degraded, or incredibly small, samples that were once considered completely unusable. A single hair without a root, a trace amount of saliva on a drinking straw, or decades-old bloodstains can now yield the same genetic blueprint as a fresh sample. This means that for investigators, every piece of evidence from an old cold case is suddenly a new opportunity, a new chance to find a lead that went unseen for years. This ability to get DNA profiling is just the first step. The real game changer is what police can do with it now. It's a technique called investigative genetic genealogy, or IgG, and it's solving the unsolvable. To understand its power, we'll take a look at a case from Quebec, the case that was cold for 17 years. Now, in December of 2008, we're going to look at the case of the murder of Catherine Devielle, and that was from Montreal in Quebec. Now, she was found murdered in her Montreal apartment. She had been assaulted sexually and obviously killed, and her killer had set fire to try and destroy the evidence. But he failed. Investigators recovered his DNA from the scene. They had the killer's genetic profile, but when they ran it through the National DNA Databank, there was no match. For years, that case continued and went cold. But in 2021, investigators tried a new approach. They took the same DNA profile and uploaded it to a public commercial genealogy website, the kind that millions of people use to build their family trees. They didn't get a direct hit, but they got something just as powerful, and that was a partial match to a distant relative of the killer. Someone who had submitted their own DNA simply to learn about their ancestry. Diane Seguin was a forensic scientist back when those things were being submitted, and she had said at the time that we download the profile in those banks and we wait. Sometimes we get matches, and when we get interesting matches, we go forward. Using that distant relative, though, in this case, was a starting point. The genealogist meticulously built out a family tree, branching backwards and forwards through generations. They narrowed the search until they landed on one name, and that was Jacques Bolduc. Now, he was a career criminal with a long and violent history who had never once been a suspect in Catherine's murder. He was a complete stranger to her, connected only by a classified ad she had placed to sell her car. The technology had done what traditional police work never could have. It had given the ghost a name. The breakthrough, however, revealed the bittersweet nature of this work. By the time the police identified Bolduc, he had already died of natural causes in prison while serving time for other crimes. For the Davio family, this would see no trial, no day in court. But after 17 years of silence, they finally had an answer. This case perfectly illustrates the power of the IGG to solve stranger-on-stranger crimes, but also the race against time that defines these old cold cases. When we look at the future in creating a biological witness, investigative genetic genealogy is already here, and it's working. But science is pushing the boundaries even further. The next frontier in forensics is a tool that could help police when there are no genealogical matches to be found. And that is called forensic DNA phenotyping. What is that, you may ask? Well, let's take a look at this. It is basically a DNA phenotyping that is used to predict a physical appearance from DNA. Imagine police being able to generate a sketch of a suspect, not from an eyewitness, but from a suspect's own DNA left at a crime scene. This is the promise of DNA phenotyping. By analyzing specific genetic markers, or SNPs, scientists can now predict with a high degree of accuracy a person's externally visible characteristics. This includes things like their eye color, their hair color, their skin pigmentation. While it cannot produce a perfect photograph, it can create a biological witness, a composite sketch based on genetic probability. This could allow investigators to dramatically narrow a suspect pool, focusing their efforts on individuals who match the predicted physical traits, giving them a powerful new lead in cases with no witnesses and no DNA database hits. The science is moving at a breathtaking pace. The powerful new tools, though, become available at the same time they raise profound questions for our society and the judicial system in Canada. Now, the technological breakthroughs we've discussed offer unprecedented hope to families of cold case victims. But in Canada, the path to using these tools is not always clear. It's a path complicated by legal precedent, privacy laws, and crucial debate about the balance between solving crimes and protecting the civil liberties of Canadians. While police forces in the United States are solving cold cases on a weekly basis using IGG, their Canadian counterparts have been slower to embrace the technology. A major reason is the lack of a clear national legal framework governing its use. The RCMP is still in the process of developing a national policy. In the absence of federal legislation, Ontario's Privacy Commissioner has issued its own guardrails for police, a first in Canada move to provide some guidance at that level. The legislative vacuum creates a patchwork system where the ability to solve a crime could depend on which province it was committed in. At the heart of the debate are profound privacy concerns. Civil liberties advocates argue that when police search a commercial DNA database, they aren't just looking at one person's data. They are gaining access to the genetic information of their entire family, including parents, siblings, cousins, none of whom consented to be a part of a criminal investigation. This has led to a push for some, like sponsors of Senate Bill S-231, to expand Canada's official and more regulated national DNA data bank. This is to include familial searching and samples from those convicted of lesser crimes. But critics do warn that this could disproportionately affect marginalized communities and violate fundamental rights. The result is a justice system that is grappling with technology that has outpaced the law, leaving the very tool that offers so much hope potentially vulnerable to legal challenges that could jeopardize future convictions. Then we look at the human element and the enduring role of the public. Technology, no matter how advanced, is only a part of the solution, ladies and gentlemen. In speaking with investigators for this report, one thing was made clear again and again, and that is the most crucial breakthroughs often come not from a lab, but from a phone call. From a person who saw something, heard something, or has carried a secret for far too long. Your information could be the missing piece that connects the science to a suspect. It could be the key that finally brings a family peace. If you have information, ladies and gentlemen, you can contact your local police department or Crime Stoppers. For the Calgary area, you can reach them at 1-800-222-8477. You can also find them online at calgarycrimestoppers.org. I was thinking of our sponsor again. But again, remember that if you do contact calgarycrimestoppers.org, your tip is anonymous. You could be also eligible for a cash reward. So once again, the journey through Southern Alberta's cold cases is a journey through grief, mystery, and now incredible science. For families like the Iwasas, the Durons, the Bougiles, the wait for answers continues. But for the first time in a long time, there is tangible hope. Hope that a forgotten piece of evidence combined with a revolutionary technology can finally give a name to a shadow and voice to a victim. As a society, we must navigate the complex ethical questions that these new tools present. But we must also never forget the human cost of an unsolved crime and the enduring power of community that refuses to let its lost members be forgotten. Tonight's in-depth look at Southern Alberta's cold cases was brought to you again by Carey Movers Limited, helping families move forward. You can find them online at www.careymovers.com. Once again, folks, this has been tonight's episode of Primetime Live here on Jess FM and Jess TV. We appreciate you taking the time to join us for this episode. We encourage you to watch us next week. We will take a deep dive into NHL. We'll take a look at the two teams in Alberta. We will go and look at what is being predicted for both the Calgary Flames and the Edmonton Oilers this season, as the season has kicked off and started. We will also be hopefully joined by special guests next week, as well as the news that is making the rounds next Thursday evening at 8 p.m. at Mountain Standard Time. Thanks for joining us. If you have any tips to an unsolved crime, please make sure you reach out to your local law enforcement or the agency in charge of the investigation, wherever in the world that may be, and wherever in the world you're watching us from. We also encourage you, ladies and gentlemen, to add to the comment section. Let us know where exactly you are watching from. We know that we've got viewers around the world, and we love to hear from all viewers from all locations. Once again, you've been watching Primetime Live here on Jess TV and Jess FM. I am James Cousineau, and I will see you next week.